welcome to Just One More Cookie, a podcast about two sisters' journeys toward complete health and wellness. We definitely don't have it all figured out, and we're still in the thick of it, but we are enjoying the ride. We'd love for you to come and join us for Just One More Cookie.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just One More Cookie. My name is Amy.
And I'm Abby.
So if only we could have allowed you all to be within the first 6 minutes of the preparation for this week's podcast episode. And I'm actually really excited because even though this one is, so we're going to try to not get so super deep with this one, because this week we're talking about emotional eating, which 99% of the world, everyone can relate to this. But emotional eating can span from all emotions and not just sadness. But we have both had very separate emotional weeks this week in general and have experienced some patterns. So, of course, we were like, well, I think this is the week for emotional eating, even though every week those issues come up. But our personalities are very different in how we deal with emotions and handle emotions. So our prep time for each one of these podcasts are always very different. So Abigail had a great idea of one of these days we're going to have to clip them and just let you in on
our blooper reel.
The blooper reel, the 10 minutes of Abigail figuring out, does she want gum in her mouth? Does she not want gum in her mouth? Does she want to clear her throat? Does she not want to clear her throat? And then me staring, do I want the computer up or down? But anyways, thank you for joining us. We are all over the place emotionally. So Abigail, I'm gonna let you start because your stories tend to be shorter than mine. So let's dive into the emotional week of Abigail, because everyone deals with emotional eating differently. So we're gonna kind of talk about each other's, and then we're gonna dive into some strategies.
Okay, so for me, this week has just been very stressful at work. So with all of the stuff that's going on in the world, my things in my job have changed. And of course, just like the rest of the world, we're trying to kind of go with the flow, figure things out, kind of put together a new normal. So this week, I have had probably the most work stress I've had in quite some time. And it all culminated on Thursday. So it was very awful. So I actually, towards the end of the day, I got to the point where I was just I got up to go to my friend's office and I had to ask her a question. I just kind of stood there and stared. And I said, I don't even know what to do. And so she kind of went into help mode. She's like, okay, I'm going to call this person. I'm going to figure this out. You go do this, because I couldn't. I got to the point where I was so overloaded with stress. I had to run around to 2 different places after that. It was a nightmare. And all I wanted to do was go home and sit on my couch and pet my dog and eat some ice cream. And it was terrible. So let me tell you about I'll tell you about my weekly treat that I give myself. So every week I go and I get this low-fat ice cream. The brand is called Enlightened. It is very good. I've had a couple of different low-fat ice creams, which are disgusting. This one is very good. And my favorite kind is sea salt caramel. And for the life of me, I cannot find this ice cream anywhere. I feel like they just dangled it in front of me and were like, here, look at this. First taste is free. Now you can't have it. And I am like, seriously? So actually Thursday, I thought, okay, after I run all of my errands of my very stressful day, I'm going to go to the store. I knew that the Strax by the hospital I had to go to had a bunch. Last time I went there, maybe 2 months ago, I thought, I'm going to go and I'm going to clean them out. I'm just going to get a whole bunch and then freeze them, and then I'll have one once a week like my original plan. And I went in there, and as we all know right now, going to the grocery store is a nightmare. So I already had to psych myself out in my very drained emotional state, go in there, nothing. So I'm like, okay. So then on the way home, I thought I'll stop at Target. Target's supposed to carry it, nothing. And honestly, if I had it in me, I would have gone to one more store. I just couldn't. So I walked into my house and I laid on the couch and just stared for a good 5 minutes and just couldn't function. And I thought if I had sweets in my house, I literally would devour every single thing, which this is why I don't keep sweets in my house. And I have to have a plan and have just one pint of ice cream every week, because in that emotional state, you better believe it would have been done. So I definitely felt the struggle this week of emotional eating and wanting to de-stress and just not worry about it and just eat and kind of turn off my brain, I guess. So that was kind of where I was emotionally, and I was in a very vulnerable state. So good thing the cupboards were bare. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but didn't you get something to like
at
least?
So I ended up going to the grocery store like right down the street from my house, and I got this. I've used this recipe before. So it's 1 box of Angel Food cake, 1 box of any other kind of cake that you want. You mix it together, and then you mix it with, you take a 1/3 cup of the cake mix and then 3 tablespoons of water. You mix it up and microwave it for a minute. So it just did not hit the spot. It was very chewy and gross. I ended up throwing it away after I had it. But I mean, it was just a poor substitute for what I really wanted. But I don't know. I thought I got to have something because it's been a rough day.
Yeah.
That's all I could think.
Yeah. Okay, so I can totally relate to this. Only like I feel like yours was a little bit more triumphant than mine. I would call mine more of a fail. So around this time of year, this is around the time last year when our dad got into an accident and he passed away around this time 2 years ago. So I've just kind of been feeling the weight of that lately. And grief is interesting because it comes in waves and you never know the intensity of when it comes. And what I'm learning is to simply ride the wave when it comes, which is very foreign to me, which we can kind of talk about as we dive into why we emotionally eat. But I felt the weight of it, and it was on a particular day this week where I woke up, my body's been so exhausted, and just I've been having a lot of dreams about my dad, and processing death doesn't just happen. So it was on a specific day, and I didn't do a lot of work that day. Like I did a couple of coaching calls, and then I just laid out on my bed, and I took a nap, and I woke up from the nap. And let me tell you, the time that I always want to emotionally eat the most is right after a nap. Like if you think about the Incredible Hulk, and the Incredible Hulk is like totally normal, right? He's just like going through life, like living his life as Bruce Banner. Isn't that his name? Bruce Banner. He's just Bruce, like he's just loving life as Bruce. And then all of a sudden it's like something happens and his eyes turn green. And then like the whole thing. Mm-hmm. That is me when I wake up from a nap. Like I am Amy Kochek when I go to sleep for a nap, and I'm like so sweet, and I'm just laying there, and I love my body, and I love health, and I love taking care of myself. And then when I wake up, I'm like, sugar, I need sugar right now, right at this very moment. And it's like, oh, and the same as you, I don't have that stuff in my house. And a lot of times, especially if I'm already emotional and I wake up from a nap, game over. So I wake up, and the first thing I say to myself is, bakery. I need a bakery right now. And like all the plans I had after my nap, canceled everything. Nothing. I'm not going to the gym. Nothing. Bakery is the only thing I can do. And even at that moment, like I needed to take Marley out to go to the bathroom. I looked at him and I was like, you have to come. Or I looked at her and I was like, you must come to the bakery with me. Like we're not messing around. So I grabbed Marley and I'm driving to the bakery, and the whole time I'm thinking, this is so stupid. Like You know, when you go to the bakery, you're going to overeat, you're going to sugar crash, you're just being emotional. But it's like the Incredible Hulk. It's like when
Mhm.
the Incredible Hulk is green, nobody can stand in front of him and say, listen, Bruce, like, you don't want to do this, Bruce. You don't want to destroy this entire block of industrial buildings. Like, just calm down. But you can't because like the Hulk is like kill everything. And that's what I was like, and I drive erratically because I'm like, I must get to the bakery now before I come to my senses. It's like a race. It's a race with like this emotional high in my like logical brain. Like I have to race myself because I have been doing this long enough to understand that it passes. The desire for emotional eating will pass if you ride it out. And I know this. So I'm like, go faster so you don't come to your senses. I come in this vegan bakery. I believe in supporting local. It is a local bakery. I walk in to this delicious, delectable bakery. And I'm like, I'm like, I want a cookie. She's like, it's buy 3, get 1 free. I'm like, of course, I want 4. Then she was like, then she's like, the baker has just cooked zucchini blueberry loaves. Do you want them? I said, I want nothing more in life than what you just said. And she holds the loaf in front of me. I'm in heaven. So I leave with so many baked goods. I go home. I'm sitting in front of the TV, watching something I don't even really want to watch. By the 3rd cookie, I'm nauseated because it's so much sugar because my body's not even used to it. But I'm like, oh, we're here. We might as well just go all in. And I'm just like, food, food, food. And I finish and I'm like, I feel gross. And at the same time, nothing that brought me there has been solved. Not
Mhm.
one thing. So now it's not just, it's almost like, I wonder what Bruce thinks when he looks down and all of his clothing is tattered and he's like, well, who ruined all these buildings? Like, what's the aftermath of Bruce's behavior? That's how I felt, like just looking around at all these bakery packages and feeling like the mounds of sugar in my body, and also still with the idea of nothing's changed. I still miss my dad. I'm still overwhelmed. I'm still stressed. And on top of that, I feel like I derailed myself today. And then
Mhm.
you have to deal with the guilt that comes after that.
Right.
So that's what my week looked like. Yours, a bit more successful.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I felt like it was a letdown. You know,
Yeah.
my treat that I deserved. And honestly, I am proud of myself that when I went to the store, because there was other, you know, so-called healthy ice creams. But right now, you know, keto is really popular, but keto has a ton of fat. And I'm not doing a high fat diet. So for me to count those would be a ton of points. And I had rationed it out and I thought I'm not going to derail myself. Plus, I'd never had those brands before. So then it is just luck of the dice. You know, it might be disgusting. And if I spent the money and I'm about to use the points, you better believe I'm going to eat it. So it better not be disgusting. So it was just, but then at the end of the night, I thought I really deserved my ice cream because I had a terrible day and I just didn't have it. And I was very bummed. It really, I don't know. It was a
Yeah.
letdown for sure.
Yeah. And I want to normalize this process because I think so many times we think we're the only ones. I mean, in so many
Mhm.
areas of our weight loss journey or health journey. And I want to make sure we're adamant about this. Like, just being on a health journey doesn't mean that you're overweight. There's a lot of people that are at maybe their goal weight, or they might even be underweight, but health wise, they're
Mhm.
very unhealthy. So this is just like a full holistic health discussion. But it is very normal to have emotional eating moments. It is normal. Like I said at the beginning, like this, especially in the American culture, because food is so central to so many things that we do. that there's so many reasons why we emotionally eat, and so many of us that do it and are still struggling with it. And I know for me and you, because we discussed this, one of the major ones is a lot of times when we emotionally eat, it's because within us, we are either emotionally starved or we're emotionally packed. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that, what I mean by emotionally starved, and I can only speak for myself, a lot of times I am not being aware of the needs that I have in my life to emotionally address myself. My love language is physical touch and it's quality time. And a lot of times I can just go through life and not meaningfully, first of all, meaningfully connect with myself, which means I'm not checking in with myself. I'm not spending time with myself. I am not meaningfully like aware of my body. I am on autopilot and I'm just working and going and doing. And it's like I'm not connecting at all with myself or with the world around me. I'm in a room filled with people and I'm lonely. So sometimes I find myself and I can get emotionally starved. And then the other side is emotionally packed, which I felt this week specifically because as a child into like later years, I learned how to shove my emotions down, right? Um we didn't really grow up in a family where it was like you shared emotions freely, but I think so many people didn't grow up in that type of family
Mhm.
because that environment has only just kind of been introduced on the scene. Like you didn't you didn't share things, and if you got upset, you had a window of time to cry and then you got to get over it, keep it pushing. And I know for me that's become a mode of habit of how I deal with my emotions. It's like you can have a moment to cry about it or a moment to talk about it, but after that, it's got shove it down. Even when it comes to grieving my dad, it's like dealing with guilt of, wait, should I even be like thinking about this? Like it's been 2 years. Is that should I? And I find myself shoving and shoving and shoving instead of like allowing myself to be comfortable with my emotions, because when I'm emotionally starved or emotionally packed, turning to eating has a way of just allowing my emotions to be turned off. It's like it's almost like this it creates those set like similar endorphins that you get when you're like emotionally connecting or feeling, and like you're feeling something, even though it's a very unhealthy way of feeling. But I find that those two things for me are sometimes what usually pushes me towards turning to emotional eating.
Mhm. I want to address something that you said about how it wasn't it hasn't become normal to be emotionally vulnerable and share emotions until recently. So, yeah, and I think a lot of the people in our generation, we were raised like that. You didn't really discuss your emotions. And I think a lot of it is not so much that we tried to and somebody was saying shut up, we don't talk about your emotions, be quiet, that's a sign of weakness. I think it's because it is a learned behavior and it doesn't come naturally. You have to be taught it, or you have to go through a lot of difficult situations in your life or traumatic situations, or you have to actively seek to learn how to do it. And I think that's why a lot of times we didn't know how to express it. So instead, we thought, well, we'll just numb it and just not worry about it, and we'll just, deal with it by eating something sweet because that'll make me feel good. So then I won't have to deal with the emotions that I've just packed down. So I think that that's something that's really difficult to learn, but I think it's very important. And especially, which I just talked about at the beginning, one thing that I find that really trips me up with emotional eating is stress. And I have learned that I am very bad at dealing with stress. I don't know how to do it. I have a very hard time compartmentalizing. I have a hard time stepping back, being mindful, breathing, all of that. It's just, especially, I think a lot of it has to do with the nature of my job. Stuff comes at me constantly. And then it's almost like I shut down. And so if I go and focus on, okay, I'm just going to have something sweet. I know it's going to make my body feel better. So then it's going to, then I won't have to think about it. I can focus on how delicious this piece of cake tastes. And then I don't have to think about how I've got 40 emails that I still have to address. So I think, and that's one thing that I am still learning how to deal with, is I know that this is a pitfall for me, and I'm trying to think of ways to de-stress or how to handle it when it comes, because if not, for sure, it becomes a stumbling block for me.
I think the phrase emotional avoidance, I think, is so powerful just within this discussion of both the things we just talked about, because it's easier for me to sit down in front of Netflix and eat a cupcake or cereal. Y'all are going to know that my favorite food is cereal and cake. If y'all don't know right now, just that will always be my reference. Tell me a hamburger and I'll be like, pass.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, give me a cupcake and I'm like, we'll be best friends. But it's easier for me to sit in front of the TV and mindlessly eat than to say out of my mouth, I'm discontent with my life, or I'm unhappy in my relationships, or I'm unhappy with myself. Because it really comes to, I'm unhappy with myself, or I'm questioning certain beliefs in my life, or all the things that we're like avoiding, the real conversations that we're avoiding with ourselves and with the people that we love. It is easier for us to sit down and to just consume food because there's something comforting about it. And like you said, it's like a way of numbing, because it gives you a shot of endorphins, and it takes away all of the truths for just a moment. And then if I sit in front of the TV, it makes it even better, because then I could definitely drown out the noise, and then the eating becomes mindless. But it's almost like it becomes a vicious cycle, because we're trying to circumvent emotional eating without dealing with the very issue that comes with emotional eating, which is you're not dealing with your emotions, which is why we're emotionally eating, right? So it's much more difficult in both of our situations. It's much more difficult for me to pause when I wake up from a nap and pause and say, for me, this time of year is the most difficult, because wrapping my head around the idea that my dad is never coming back is so overwhelming and so devastating. I can't even put it into words. That puts me in a very vulnerable position, and it makes me uncomfortable. Right. And a lot of times it's like you said, when we're not practicing it and when we're not doing it on a regular basis, getting in contact with our emotions and being honest can be so uncomfortable. But there's so much freedom in saying that than there is in running to a bakery. And I'm not saying you can never run to a bakery. I'm an advocate of bakeries, but especially the one here, the vegan bakery, Valhalla Bakery. I love you. But that's it. When we see that emotional eating is just our escape, that we are running from the more difficult conversation we need to have with ourselves and the more difficult conversation we need to have with other people. And if we pause it and have the difficult conversation with ourselves, the need for the eating subsides.
Well, yeah. And I feel like like you're talking about, we're dulling the pain, or we're escaping, anything like that. We have to remember all of that is still waiting for us after we finish the cupcake, and we still have to deal with it. So not only have I now I've come back to this giant mess that I had, 2 hours ago, but now I feel guilty because I just consumed all of these calories, and then my body has had a sugar crash. And so then now I feel lazy and sluggish. And yeah, I think that this is really what's the main focal point, is dealing with emotions, just like you said, because otherwise we're going to turn to unhealthy behaviors. instead of dealing with it.
Yeah. I think another thing too, going along with stress is just exhaustion, like
Mm-hmm.
not having a lot of sleep. Because I know for me, like when I am tired, obviously your emotions are already running high, like you're very emotionally vulnerable. And I'm sure people, especially people, women with children, and it's like to really stick with a healthy eating regime, sometimes or regimen. Which one is it?
I don't know.
Regime. Okay. Either one of
Regimen
those.
sounds better. Regimen.
Either one of those. I feel like because I'm an editor, people hold me to a higher standard. So I just want you all to know I've been average since high school and I just make average look really good. Um, but I feel like sometimes when we get so tired and we don't have time to plan, we can be run by our emotions, right? And it's easier for us to make emotional decisions because we're so tired. And that's not only just having proper rest, but not to keep reiterating this, we also can become exhausted by our own emotions. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said, this week, I've slept more this week than I have probably in the entire month, but the weight of my emotions just has been really getting me tired and exhausted. And I'm allowing myself, like we talked about earlier, I'm allowing myself to lean into those, which is why it was easier for me to snap out of that and recognize, okay, I see where this is going. If I don't get this under control, I am going to shift in a downward spiral of just emotionally eating consistently. So I'm going to lean into this pain. I'm going to talk it out. I'm going to cry it out if I need to. I'm going to write. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And some of the strategies we'll mention later on to get out of this, because I understand that my own emotions can make me exhausted and tired.
Mm-hmm. Right. I do want to talk about though something kind of positive because I listened to this on a different podcast and they were talking about how shared experiences make things so much more enjoyable. And they did some kind of experiment where you were in a room with a person and it was a stranger, and then they would have, you would eat a piece of cake, maybe it was really good, and the other person wouldn't. And then they rated, how much you enjoyed it. And then they did the same experiment where you and the stranger both ate the same piece of cake. And they showed that your emotional response, your happiness, and your enjoyment actually went up. So I know that a lot of times, just in our culture, we use food to connect. We go out to dinner with friends, or we have family dinner or holidays, stuff like that. And a lot of the eating, you can associate it with good times with family. Every Christmas we got to have some of Aunt Glenda's cookies because that's a tradition and they're amazing.
Yes.
Just stuff like that. And then when you do eat those, you're enjoying it with your family and it brings back memories. So it's not always unhealthy to enjoy and use our emotions and associate that with food. But I just think that, if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're allowing food to take care of us instead of, us doing the work and actually putting in the time and dealing with the emotions, we can definitely get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah. And I think another thing with the Happiness Lab, which is a really great podcast, they talk about savoring, because I think I agree, like the idea of like food being fun, like food can really be fun, even healthy food. Like I make a morning wrap. It's almost like a crunch wrap from Taco Bell, but it doesn't have anything that they put in Taco Bell because none of it's real. So, but I found this lady who does wraps, and then my gym has been doing a bunch of wraps. So it's like this like fun wrap, and it makes me so happy when I eat it. I'm like, this is so good, because I think you're right. It's like when we're using food as an additive to our lives and not as a prescription from our lives, I think that's when like the true enjoyment of food actually is able to then come on the scene, and food can stop being the enemy, or it can stop being the the medication that you're using to cover something,
Mhm.
because when food is used as a coping mechanism, which is another thing that causes emotional eating, is when we are training ourselves to use food to cope with all of our emotions. Like when we refuse to cope with life and we are turning to food, that's when our relationship with food can become so skewed and difficult, you
Mhm.
know, when it's almost like any time. I know that there was a certain time in my life, especially when I was like really in the thick of dealing with bulimia. It was like I could not go a week, but I noticed that it was like when I would turn to binging and purging, it's like something would happen and I would get upset. And it was like, instead of dealing with it, like once again, instead of being honest and just saying, that made me sad or that made me feel upset, I just turn to food and it's easier. And just in even talking with in our relationship, like we've had a lot of ups and downs in our relationship, especially
Mhm.
within the last 3 years. Like our relationship has transformed and we have had to have so many difficult conversations where sometimes like Abigail would say something to me and it's like, pause. Like that phrase literally punched me in the chest. Let's take a minute and let me recover. But it was like I needed to repair that relationship. I needed to hear that. And the same for
Mhm.
her, right? So it's like instead of us doing those things in our lives, like having those difficult conversations with people or having difficult conversations with ourselves, once again, food becomes our coping mechanism. It becomes the thing we're always turning to that says, okay, make it better. Because I
Mhm.
don't want to face life, make it better. And when you use food like that, the beauty that was supposed to happen in your body with food ends up being toxic.
Mhm. I agree. So all of this has been really kind of depressing. So let's talk about how we
Yes.
can deal with it. Some of these we put into practice already. Some of these we are definitely still working on.
Clearly.
Clearly,
Clearly.
yes. Oh, so, but let's brainstorm some of them. Let's talk about them because, like we said, this is a huge issue. We all deal with it, and we definitely want to work towards getting over it and being more healthy in this aspect. So, one thing that I have found, and this works very well for me just because I am very organized, I follow a plan. I am very much a person of routine. In fact, there's one girl that I work with, and she asks me all the time, which I hope that she listens to this podcast and hears me talking smack about her practically every day. She'd say, "What did you bring for lunch? A wrap?" And I said, "Yes, I did." So she can't believe that I eat the same thing every day. But
Mhm.
I like the stuff that I eat and I
It
like the
works.
routine. It works for me.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, they can't. They could not have the same thing every day. They would lose their mind. But I think it's very important if you establish a routine, you teach your body when to get hungry. So that way you can listen to your body and you can know, my body it doesn't need to be fed right now. It's saying, well, I'm hungry, but if I wait for 10 minutes, I know that it's going to go away. So for example, with me, I started doing, which we talked about maybe a couple weeks ago, where this time around when I started getting back into it and I changed my plan and my routine and I decided to do intermittent fasting. So I eat between 11:30, 12, and then as late as maybe 6:30 at the absolute latest. And so I have taught my body, and sometimes in the morning when I'm at work, and a lot of times I think it's affected by stress sometimes. I'll feel like, oh, I'm just really hungry. I cannot wait until 11:30. But my body has been trained that I'm okay. I know that lunch is coming at 12 o'clock. I can hang in there. Whereas before I started this plan, when I was busy at work, I thought, okay, this is going to be my plan. I am going to eat a really high protein breakfast It's going to make me last all the way until I get home, and I'll just eat at home. And then I would get off at 3:30, or, if I had a really early start, maybe I'd get off at 2:00. And then by the time it was 3:30 or 4:00, I was ravenous. So then I couldn't come home and work out because I was starving. I felt like I couldn't focus on anything else. I'm just super hungry. So when I made and established a routine that worked for my body, I can kind of, I can listen to my body, and my body knows, okay, this is not when we eat. So I can hang on. So I think establishing a routine really works, especially for me. I can't say it'll work for everybody, but if you haven't tried it, you might want to try to put it into place and see how it works for you.
Yeah. And I think for me, like, I don't have specific times. Like, I don't say like at noon, at 2, at 7, but at like you said, I eat relatively around the same time every day, and I meal prep every week. So yesterday was my meal prep day. So Friday is my grocery shopping day. I have everything that I know I want to get. I know what I'm eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. I put it in Tupperwares. And then every day I just have to go and pull the stuff, because a lot of times, from the standpoint of someone who does not like cooking, I pick things that I know I'm going to like the taste of, but I also don't want to spend like 7 hours in the kitchen. And I definitely don't want to spend so much time in the kitchen every day. So it's like, if you're someone that's not like Abigail and you're like, I can't imagine eating something different or something the same every day, that's fine. But the point is that at the beginning of the week, just know what you're going to eat and prepare for that, which means that doesn't mean that you're emotion eating proof, because I had wraps, and I had low carb turkey chili, and I had broccoli all prepared. That didn't stop me from going to the bakery. However, it narrows my opportunities, and it also helped me get right back on track, because it was like the next day it was like, all right, you know why you did it. You know what you did. Own it. Let's move on. We have the tools in place. Let's move forward. And then it also does get your body in a routine. So it's like, sometimes we want to eat because we're bored. Sometimes we want to eat because it's just that time of day. Like, I get in a 3:00 slump, even if I just eaten at 1, it's like at 3, I get hungry, and I'm like, okay, you're just tired. Mm-hmm. So having a routine kind of keeps you away from that.
I think that you just saying that brought up something I wanted to point out too. I think if you do have a routine in place, it's easier to pinpoint when you are eating out of emotions or stress or because you're tired. Yeah. So if you have that routine in place and you are feeling hungry, it's easier for you to evaluate it and say, wait a second. Normally I don't eat during this time. Am I really hungry, or is something else going on that I need to deal with?
Yeah. And prepare good food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't like salad, don't prepare it. I hate kale. I don't care how many people say kale will make me live an extra 10 years. I don't want it. If that's what my next 10 years, I'll take the earth. Make sure that you're enjoying, I like to research, like YouTube, go on the internet, whatever you want, find healthy alternatives. It doesn't have to just be turkey, tilapia, and chicken. You can have fun. You can make things that are really good and experiment. I made it was called skinny white chicken chili last week. I won't be repeating it. That's my favorite. But it's you can try different stuff and then make in bulk. I make big pots of stuff, So have fun with it, so that you're not going to emotionally eat because the stuff you have in your refrigerator is garbage. I look forward to eating the food in my refrigerator, which once again keeps me away from emotionally eating, because the stuff in my refrigerator satisfies me, and I'm not oh, for lunch I'm just going to have a cheese stick. That's unrealistic. You would be hungry. You know what I mean? Nobody gets full from a cheese stick, and if they do, they've trained their stomach to be the size of a button. So you want that. Now, the second thing, and I really want to talk about this because I have personal experience with this. One way to really help with emotional eating is going to therapy. And this can either be a super hot button topic for some people, or it can be more accepted. In a society perspective, it's very much more accepted than it's been before. I started going to therapy 2 years ago. a little before my dad died. And I noticed that so many things in my life felt super chaotic. And I felt like I was going to explode with emotion. And I found myself like every morning waking up, bawling my eyes out. And then at some point, I was going to Baskin Robbins during the day, or just, and it was like a combination of just like really unhealthy physically, but also knowing that I was so mentally unhealthy and I needed a space. And the thing that's so awesome about therapy is that when you go to therapy, you're not sitting in front of a person that's looking at you and saying, man, you are crazy and you're really messed up. You know, that's not what really happens is your therapist looks at you and says, wow, you're really normal. And everything that you're going through is part of the human experience. And then it's a way of like guiding you through resolving a lot of issues in your life that are difficult for you to go through on your own. It's like just having a guide that takes you through some difficult emotions and things that you might need to resolve so that the default isn't emotional eating. There's even therapists that specialize in helping you address emotional eating, you know? So sometimes it helps to have a professional come along the journey with you to help you talk through a lot of things, specifically if you find yourself in a space of always saying something is just off and I don't know what it is. That's a valid statement. You know, like I was waking up every morning crying and I didn't know why. If somebody were to say, why are you crying? I don't know. I'm just crying. So I think that's something that definitely is worth looking into. And a lot of times a therapist lets you come to like 1 or 2 sessions just to test it out. So you don't even have to make like a full commitment. But I think there is value specifically to people who really struggle in just their emotional life and know they have a lot that they might need to work through, which then could help with the emotional eating.
That's great. I also think too, one thing that really helps is getting up and moving for sure. Especially since, you know, there's all kinds of scientific data that says that working out, doing any kind of physical activity releases endorphins. It makes you feel good physically, mentally, and then emotionally. You know, it's a sense of accomplishment. Like, you know, I really didn't want to get up and work out, but I pushed myself. So then it makes you feel good about yourself. Like, you know, I was dedicated to it. I accomplished something. And then I've noticed too, a lot of times if I've done a really heavy, high intense workout, I need to give myself a good hour before I can eat, just because I couldn't put a bunch of food in my stomach because I've done all kinds of really heavy work. I need to give my body some time to rest. But even if, you know, going outside and taking a walk, because you can go out, you know, you get some fresh air, you know, burn a couple calories, get those endorphins flowing. So if you try to, you know, instead of reaching for a bag of chips, you think, okay, well, you know, that I really am stressed out, but I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go for a walk. And that can really change it around really quickly.
Yeah, I know that like through this whole quarantine, I've upped my walking like 7,000 steps a day because I'll walk like literally every 2 hours because I feel like movement has a way of helping your mind clear. So if you're in a space that like allows you to walk outside, I would suggest doing that as much as possible because first of all, our bodies were made to move. The more sedentary we are, the more that we're just sitting down. Sometimes it can make, and especially if you're an overthinker and someone that just gets emotional in general, or even someone that struggles with depression, the worst thing you can do is just sit in one place and just watch TV for hours or just sit with your thoughts, you know. Mm-hmm. But getting up and actually moving gets those endorphins flowing. And it can be as simple as doing a walk or, you know, like Abigail was saying, doing like something high intensity, because for me, my appetite immediately like lowers right after a workout. Like I had to give myself some time, and then I'm more apt to eat right because I didn't just sweat in the gym for an hour to eat a piece of cake. I'll do that on another day when I want to make a poor choice. But another thing that really works for me personally is making some form of human connection. Because like I said at the beginning, a lot of times when I'm feeling the need to emotionally eat, it's because I am not connecting with other people. Like I'm feeling very alone. I feel like the three values that people really embrace the most to know that they're seen, they're heard, and they're loved. And it's a lot of times when we feel starved of those three things, when we feel alone in this world, when we feel like we're going through it by ourselves, it can make us more bent towards going into ourselves and getting the bag of Doritos, right? And it's so funny because, like, sometimes when I'm at my meetings, I'll have my honesty moment because honesty is so important. And I'll just like say, I ate my feelings this week. And that's literally how I feel. Like, if I go and get a bag of cookies, it wasn't necessarily because I wanted cookies. It was because I had feelings. And instead of talking them out or connecting with another human being based on those feelings, I ate the cookies. And the cookies didn't talk back. And all they did was, incorporate themselves into the cellulite on my legs. So it's so much more fulfilling to FaceTime Abigail and to just say, I really want to emotionally eat, or like I'm really feeling myself wanting to eat. And then Abigail will ask me questions like, well, why? And sometimes I don't know why. And that's okay not to know why. And then other times it's like, well, because I'm sad and because I don't know how to communicate my sadness, And I think a lot of times it's like when you're first starting to get in touch with your emotions and people are asking you why, it's okay for you to consistently say, I don't know. Because you probably don't.
Think about it too, because we talked about this is a learned behavior and you don't come with it already hardwired into your brain. So when you first start emoting, you're a little kid learning how to do it. So yeah, if somebody says, how do you feel? Sad. It sounds like a very basic, but I mean, you're just learning how to express and then you build on that. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think and not to use our relationship as an example, but I'm going to use it as an example because why not?
Why not?
But it's like when we were dialoguing through like a lot of the breakdown of our relationship, it was it took us a while to be able to put those thoughts into words, right? Like me and Abigail didn't talk to each other for like 6 months. And those people who know us know that was like a shock of all shocks. We talked every single day. We've been best friends since after Abigail decided she was going to stop being mean to me and abandon me. When I was a child, she said that I could come with her and her friend, and they're off in the distance, and I'm screaming Abigail, and she pretended that she didn't know.
I don't remember that story.
Of course you don't. I talked about it with my therapist, and we resolved it. However,
that's a much more in-depth story than we need to save for another time.
I'm just saying, I know. But the point is that like when we weren't talking to each other, right? We did like a lot of, I know for me and for her, we talked about this. It was like a lot of internal searching and a lot of doing work with us. And when we came back, it was like Abigail being able to put into words why she was hurt by me. And it was like very specific, sobering statements, which meant that for her to get to a specific statement to say, this is why I'm hurt by you, meant that she had to do a lot of internal emotional work and be able to learn how to lean into pain. Because when we don't know how to lean into pain, we're going to keep saying, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm always depressed. I don't know why I'm always, sad, or I don't know why I always feel so disconnected and lonely. It's okay to say all of those things, but that's the value of learning how to connect with yourself and then also learning how to connect with other people who are going to be willing to listen to you. And when you say, I don't know, and they say, well, that's okay that you don't know, but you're at the right first step by just acknowledging and saying, I don't feel okay. And that's okay.
Yeah. I want us to make a suggestion too, because we're talking about, being connected to people. I know, stuff is starting to open back up right now with, restrictions being lifted and everything. But one thing the two of us kind of have started implementing is doing video chatting. And this is one thing that I suggest. And it has been super fun. So if you are feeling really isolated or alone, and I mean, this could just be, I mean, even if you're not single and live alone like I am, even if you're, you're in a relationship or you're married, you have kids or whatever, if you're feeling isolated, from other adults because you're just around kids all day, get one of your friends, FaceTime them, and do something not, just something normal, like watch a movie together, which me and Amy have done a bunch of times. And it is so much fun. You would think it would be dumb. And what's the difference? But it's like we're in the same room watching it together. And that shared experience, like I talked about before with shared experience with eating, when you're doing it with somebody else, you enjoy it more. So if you want to have a cup of coffee and you're feeling like, I just want to sit and talk to my friend, just normal, call them and FaceTime them so you can see their face and just have a cup of coffee, eat dinner with them, stuff like that. Just so if you are feeling depressed, because that can be a huge contributor for feeling depressed, is feeling isolated, feeling alone, feeling disconnected. So I highly recommend it. In fact, I think probably tomorrow we should have a movie night.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one other thing that I wanted to talk about too, and this is one thing that I really need help on because I am terrible at it, is self-care. And I am trying to do a better job. So I think that if you're listening to yourself, listening to your emotions, your thoughts, how you're feeling, and taking care of yourself, it's so much easier to not turn to food because you're working out, why am I feeling this way? So, I mean, one way that I have learned, which has really helped me out, I really like to go outside when it's nice out and just be outside, sitting outside. I have some chairs and a fire pit that I put in my side yard, and I just sit out there and I read a book and just be out there in the peace and quiet. If it's fresh air, the wind is blowing, just to be outside in nature. There's something about nature, which sounds really kind of corny and hippie, like, oh, nature.
I love it.
Yeah. But it does help you to be connected with nature and the beauty of nature. Or, go do some yoga classes. And you might not be flexible and you might fall a lot or lose your balance, and you might laugh more than you actually do relax, but eventually you'll get to the point where you'll find it, you can let go of some stuff, just stretching, relaxing, read, take a bath, anything that's going to work for you and can take time away from the chaos that's going around outside of you, and just relax, take care of yourself, because we want to take care of not just our bodies by not putting garbage in it. We also want to take care of our minds by not putting garbage in it, and guard ourselves, our internal selves, and deal with those emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah. I heard a phrase. I was actually just reading a book, and there's this phrase that says, never accept a shirt from a naked man.
What does that mean?
I'll explain it. Actually, when I read it in the book, it sounded so much better. Right when I said it out of my mouth, I was like, oh, man.
That's a hilarious quote.
Let me explain it. It can also be a woman as well, for gender neutrality. Yes. So the idea is, in so many of our lives, we live with the idea that the right way to live is to sacrifice ourselves for everybody else, right? So understanding that you are the most important person in your life, because if you don't value and take care of you first, then everything that follows that is just pieces of you. It is a deficit of you. You are giving the least version of yourself to other people, but yet we give ourselves the badge of honor. Like, well, I don't do anything for myself, and I never have time for myself. And we say that as like that's a badge, that's a worthy statement. But in reality, you're cheating yourself, and then you're cheating everybody else. You're giving everybody, here it is. You're giving everybody else a shirt and then walking around naked so that you're out in the elements. Well, you don't see the value of the shirt? I don't want it, because clearly you don't value it. No, thank you. That's why when you're on an airplane, they say, don't give anybody a mask until you give it to yourself first, and it's counterintuitive because we're trained that, like, lay down your life for other people, lay down your life for yourself first. And then it's truly love when you lay down your life for others, because it's like, I love myself first. I'm leading by example first. And sometimes that can be in the form of doing something in the morning. I know for me, like, I really try to do self-care in the mornings because it gets lost through the day of like all the stuff I have to get done. So it's like in the morning when I wake up, I do the same thing. I believe in the power of nature. I do not think that is corny. In fact, our dad was a hippie and had one of the best stories ever of rolling around in a mud puddle and finding spiritual enlightenment. It was personally one of my favorites. I think there was drugs involved, but every time he told the story, I was like, Dad, tell me the story when you were rolling around in a mud puddle. He loved telling it. But anyways, I do believe in like the power of nature. So like I go on like morning walks and it's like, it's so quiet and I'm in like awe, like, oh, thank you for the smell of these flowers and listen to the birds. And it sounds corny, but it gets you in this like really like gratitude. And I'm saying affirmations. I'm setting my intention for how I want my day to go. I am saying I will statements to myself to like give myself direction and honor myself so that when I start my day, I am giving to myself first and telling myself, you are valuable. And in order for you to offer that same value to the world, it must be given to you first. And I think that is a great place to start. And just from all the suggestions that we gave, do the ones that work for you. If you're not a nature person, if you go outside and find yourself already breaking out in hives, maybe nature's not for you. Like you don't have to do that. You don't have to. I won't take bubble baths. I don't want to sit in my filth with bubbles at the top. That doesn't sound relaxing. The whole time I would be thinking about this dirty water that we're disguising with bubbles. Like, I don't want it. So,
you could take a shower first, rinse yourself off. Like you have to do when you go to the gym and use the pool, you have to rinse off first.
So you want me to rinse off, then still get in bubbles with my filth because I don't believe that the rinse. So you want me to wash, then wash again. I'm just not going to do it. Like
it's
I'm
just
not.
A relaxation.
I know. See, so that's the difference. So like Abigail enjoys laying in her filth. I don't. That's how she cares for herself. I prefer to stand underwater and shower like a normal human being. But the point is find things that work for you. And I really want to end this out by affirming once again, if you are finding yourself in a mode of emotional eating, especially now, I know for me, and just from being in my meetings and just talking to people who are on the health journey, people are struggling a lot. Emotions are high right now. It is totally normal. It is so normal and it's okay. The worst thing is to get yourself in a beat myself up, emotionally eat. Because I'm emotionally eating, I'll beat myself up. Then I'll beat myself up again. It's a constant cycle. So we're encouraging you today with our stories, and hopefully you laughed a little bit, and maybe you cried at the beginning because Abigail said it was depressing. But thank you for being in touch with your emotions at the beginning. But hopefully you got a good laugh out of this, and hopefully you understand that it is so normal. But there are strategies and things that you can do to minimize it. It will never be. You might never get perfect. You might still be like me and Abigail and having to call each other and tears in your eyes and saying, the pack of Doritos is in the garbage and the rest is digesting right now as we speak. And all of that's okay. But the most important thing is that you're still on the journey and you're still going and you're not quitting. So, and one more thing, we really, really, really want to hear from you. So, if you can comment, share, like the podcast. We want people to join this community. We want to hear what you guys are thinking about the podcast. We want topic ideas. What do you want to hear about? What are some of the stories? Share your stories. If you have some funny emotional eating stories, if you even have sad ones, share them with us. So we feel like we're not the only ones. But yeah, share the podcast. so we can spread this message and really get people on this journey to know that wherever you're at is normal and it's okay and you're not alone. So, Abigail, thank you for being a part of this, and thank me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this week for another episode of Just One More Cookie. We will see you guys next week.